There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't announce itself with shadows or screams. It's quiet, persistent. It hides behind morning routines, behind polite conversations, behind the mask you put on before you leave the house. But deep down, there's a terror that never quite fades. It's not the fear of monsters under the bed or creatures in the dark. It's the fear of your own performance failing, of someone seeing through the act, of being caught in the exhausting work of pretending to be someone you're not. It's the kind of dread that grows inside you slowly. Not sudden, not dramatic, but constant. And eventually, it starts to change the way you breathe, the way you speak, the way you exist in rooms full of people who think they know you. People often assume that those who wear masks are simply fake, superficial, or dishonest. But that's rarely the full truth. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes they care too deeply about what others think. They've calculated every response, rehearsed every laugh, studied every social cue until interaction became a script rather than a spontaneous exchange. And after a while, they start to lose track, not of who they're pretending to be, but of who they actually are underneath it all. Psychologically, this experience creates a fracture in identity. When you spend too long performing a version of yourself, your brain begins to blur the lines between performance and reality. It's called self-concept confusion. That's why pretending doesn't just exhaust you emotionally, it actually fragments your sense of self. Your thoughts become divided. Your energy splits between maintenance and survival. Because the human psyche needs authenticity to feel whole. And to pretend for too long creates a kind of psychological homelessness, where you no longer have a place inside yourself that feels entirely real. Yet today, you can curate a perfect image online and still feel utterly hollow. Because performance isn't identity, and approval isn't self-worth. There's a difference between being admired and being known. And that's the part people who fear pretending understand better than anyone. Most of them didn't choose this path intentionally. It's not like they woke up one day and decided, I'll never show my real self again. Usually it happens gradually, through small moments of rejection that teach you which parts of yourself are acceptable. You express an unpopular opinion and watch faces change. You show excitement about something and someone mocks it. You reveal vulnerability and it gets weaponized later. And eventually your brain learns a painful lesson. Authenticity is dangerous. So you start editing yourself. You begin performing. You create a character that fits better into the world around you. And at first it might even work. People like this version better. They laugh at your jokes. They invite you places. But the truth is, after enough time, the performance becomes a prison. Because deep down, humans need to be seen for who they actually are. Even the most skilled performer still craves one person who knows the difference between the act and the truth. But when you've pretended for years, something strange begins to happen inside. Your authentic self doesn't just hide, it starts to atrophy. Like a language you once spoke fluently but haven't used in decades, your genuine personality becomes harder to access. You start forgetting what you actually think versus what you've trained yourself to say. You lose track of your real preferences buried under layers of what others might approve of. Sometimes you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. If this resonates with you, I want you to do something right now. Don't just watch this and move on. Take a moment, pause this video if you need to, and write down one truth about yourself that you've been hiding. Just one. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be something simple, a hobby you pretend not to care about, an opinion you always soften, a feeling you constantly dismiss. Write it down somewhere only you can see it, because acknowledging it, even privately, is the first step toward reclaiming yourself. There's a concept in psychology called identity foreclosure. It's when you adopt a role so completely that you never fully explore who you might be without it. You become the funny friend, the responsible one, the agreeable colleague, and these roles harden around you like armor. Your brain associates dropping the mask with existential threat. So even when you're alone, even when no one is watching, you struggle to turn it off. You've performed for so long that the stage has become your only reality. But here's what's fascinating. Fear of pretending doesn't always look like anxiety. Sometimes people who live behind masks appear perfectly confident. They seem to navigate social situations effortlessly. They're charming, appropriate, always saying the right thing. But deep down, they live in constant dread. The dread of being exposed, of someone asking a question they haven't prepared for, of a moment where the script runs out and their real self might accidentally emerge. They've built a version of themselves designed to be palatable, likable, safe. But that version often feels like watching someone else live your life. You're the actor and the audience simultaneously, never fully immersed in your own experience. It's easy to judge people who pretend, to call them frauds or people pleasers. But if you listen closely to their stories, you'll often find a thread of survival. Moments where being themselves resulted in rejection, ridicule, or punishment. And over time, that experience shapes their entire approach to existence. They begin to associate authenticity with danger, honesty with consequence. So they learn to perform instead. But the cost of that adaptation is steep, because without genuine self-expression, your emotional world becomes distorted. Your feelings start echoing in an empty chamber. There's no one to validate your actual experience because no one sees it. Psychologists say that chronic inauthenticity can lead to dissociation, not because people choose to disconnect, but because living in performance mode requires a split between the self you show and the self you hide. Identity becomes a negotiation rather than an experience. And yet something paradoxical happens. The very people who fear pretending often long for authenticity more than anyone else. They fantasize about it. They watch others be unfiltered with envy. They search for permission in every interaction to finally drop the act. Because when something is forbidden to yourself, you start to treasure even the smallest glimpses of it. But the fear doesn't just affect how you feel, it affects how you connect. Studies show that people who chronically present false selves struggle with intimacy, not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness requires revealing the parts you've spent years hiding. They overanalyze how much truth to share. They calculate vulnerability like a chess game. They test people slowly, revealing tiny pieces of themselves to see if it's safe to show more. If this video helped you see something in yourself more clearly, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're not okay with pretending anymore.